Hey, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of Notes from the Edge. I'm your host, Lisa Lacy, and this is the place we have the conversations we should have been having all along. Guess what? You're not talking about it, so we're gonna. And my guest today is Dean Graves. Dean is a mental health counselor, meditation teacher, spiritual guide, author, keynote speaker, and podcast host himself with more than 25 years experience studying consciousness. We love conscious choices in here, mindfulness, identity, and also human suffering, which is something we talk a lot about in here too. He didn't begin his meditation practice until 50 years old. Dean, I just turned 50. Long story for another day, but something happens to us at 50, I think. And Dean developed a deep interest in the nature of consciousness and humanity's relation to creation. He's authored 4 books, including Enlightenment, Plain and Simple. We like things being simple in here. He also hosts a podcast called Chatting with the Victorians and Simple Enlightenment. It sounds like he's going to make everything simple for us. And his work is focused on rapid release trauma methods. We like things that are applicable immediately, including approaches to help our veterans. Dean, welcome to Notes from the Edge, my friend. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, and I'm delighted to be here, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
Well, so good to have you here. I want to open up with this being 50 and all of a sudden discovering a new level of consciousness, because I kind of had a huge pivot after being hospitalized with my congenital blood disease and almost dying, and then turning 50. And thus we are on Notes from the Edge. So tell me about that. What happened? How did you have this transformation in midlife?
Well, it was time, and it is a point of awakening,
Mhm.
and that is an often misunderstood term. It's one that's bandied about in these days and times, somewhat recklessly. And our life has a design. Everyone's life follows the same design, but how we interpret that design and how we live that design varies uniquely from person to person. We are designed as humans, we experience a range of consciousness, and that range of consciousness is very low on the total scale of consciousness.
Mm.
We are tasked with every incarnation, every birth, creating an identity. And the identity is who we think we are, but it begins with the first thought that we process as an infant and continues being modified with every thought that we process. Every single thought in and of itself is a complete experience. We perceive an experience to last some period of time, 30 minutes, an hour, some period of time. But every perceived experience is comprised of dozens of thoughts. And every single thought, with every single thought, we are required to make a decision. And that decision that we are required to make is the thought that I'm processing at this moment either feels good and I like it and consequently want more of it, or it doesn't feel good and I don't like it. I don't want any more of it. That thought that we don't like is called stress.
Yes, we don't like stress.
Well, stress is actually very beneficial. It is much more beneficial to us than the things that we perceive that we like, because it is making us aware of what it is that we have created in our identity and in our perception of self that we need to become aware of and change.
Make a conscious choice to change. I
Exactly.
love that. Yes,
Yeah.
I love that.
And so
And
stress is our teacher.
I love that. Stress is a teacher. However, if it goes unchecked without us asking the right, better questions about it, then we're never going to get to a place of making those conscious changes. So I love this concept that we all go through an arc and we have the opportunity to grow our consciousness to make healthier choices for ourselves. But Dean, let me ask you, not everybody jumps on the growth journey, do they?
Well, no, that's, this awakening can occur when you're 18 or it can occur when you're 90. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter when it occurs. The design provides us with the opportunity from day one, but it is incumbent upon us to awaken. And awakening is nothing more. Well, let me preface this. When we create this identity, we all inherently have awareness. It is an inherent part of who we are. In order to make this identity work, and we create this identity for the sole purpose of tricking the world into giving us more of what we like. And so we have to have our awareness directionally pointed outside of us, because I have to watch your reactions to my identity so I can modify my identity to make it more effective in
That's
tricking you into
exhausting.
giving me more of what I like.
Yeah.
An awakening is that first time, that first point in our life where we have the awareness that all the stuff that we've been doing, all this tricking the world into giving us more of what we like, may be making us successful from a traditional or conventional standpoint, but it's not making us happy.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
so, in order to have that awareness that it's not making you have to invert that awareness.
You indeed do. And here we call it other focused. As long as we're other focused,
Yes.
we're never going to be able to do the intimate internal excavation we need to really assess, wow, am I, because Dina, you're describing my life. I had the six-figure income and the houses and the cars and the toys and the facade on Facebook, but it wasn't real. I was
Mhm.
very unhappy. Yeah.
Right.
It
Yeah.
was
But
very
conventionally
unhappy.
successful.
Yes, yes, on outwardly.
Yeah.
And so much so that when I finally collapsed, because that's exhausting, holding
Sure.
up
Yeah.
that
Absolutely. It's
that
intended to be exhausting.
yeah, that mask of an identity is exhaustive. I mean, by the time I had my collapse, people were like, there's no way all this was happening behind the scenes. You did such a good job of masking that nobody believed me. I was like,
You
no,
were
guys,
doing such a
really,
good job of
I
tricking us.
swear.
We didn't know we were being tricked.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, so let's dig into that a little bit deeper. Consciousness and identity. Talk to
Mhm.
me about that, because you've written extensively about consciousness and what you call the identity model. And we talk a lot about identity in here. So, what is the difference in how we're conditioned? Talk to us about that a little bit.
Well, everything that we are, everything that we experience, everything that we can conceive of is consciousness.
Yes.
Consciousness I define as our creatorness intoxicated with free will. And I understand that
Oh,
requires some unpacking.
yeah, a little
Um,
bit.
Creatorness is uh, our creatorness is who we actually are, is we are who we authentically are. Free will is a misunderstood concept. We perceive free will as the choice to turn right or turn left. The reality, that's the product of free will. Free will is actually our perception of separation.
Oh.
And so we perceive very strenuously that we are autonomous individual beings, which causes us to follow this path of creating the identity, perceiving the world around us to be authentic, and to seek our happiness from the world around us, as opposed to inverting that same awareness and exploring our creatorness. And in
Mm.
that exploration is our discovery of happiness, because in order to accomplish that inwardly directed journey, you have to become aware of the elements of that identity that you've created, and
Yes.
you begin to surrender those erroneous beliefs of self and of the world around us that cause us to perpetuate that experience of stress and eventually suffering.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so,
speaking of suffering, so you believe that misunderstanding our true nature contributes to our stress and suffering.
well, it is our
So
stress.
elaborate.
It is our stress. Anything we experience we don't like is stress, and stress
True.
is a spectrum. So, if you're accustomed to having cream in your coffee in the morning, you forget to stop by the store the night before, and the next morning you have to drink your coffee black. That's stress, but it's very minor. It's
Well, I
low
don't know.
on
If
the.
my husband has finished off the creamer, that is bad news in our house.
Okay, well, it has a
That's stress for
varying.
him.
That's right. It's a variable scale from person to person.
Fair
But
enough.
that's a very low element on the spectrum. The other extreme is something that we would interpret as a trauma.
Yeah.
Everything in
Perfect
between
spell.
there that we don't like, which is entirely up to the individual and how they interpret that experience, is stress. The difference between stress and suffering: stress is when you hit yourself in the head with a 2 before one time. You learn the lesson that it hurts and you don't do that again. Suffering is when you keep bopping yourself in the head with the same 2 before and over and over
Why?
and
Why
over.
do we keep bopping our head with the same 2x4 over and over to create our own emotional suffering?
Because we're not aware. We
So
perceive when our awareness is pointed outside of us, then we're not responsible for the nature of our experiences.
yes, accountability and responsibility are so important on this journey because at some point, when you take that finger that's other focused, you turn it inward, you have to go, what's my part
Well,
in
what can we
how my
change?
life is? Yeah.
What can we change?
Yeah.
You can change yourself.
Exactly.
Our whole experience for participating in creation is to explore ourselves in relation to people, places, and things. We cannot
That's beautiful.
learn about an experience or from an experience that we don't participate in.
Right.
And we
Right.
can only interpret experiences from our viewpoint. And so,
Correct.
consequently, every experience that we participate in is bringing us a lesson about us that we need to become aware of. If it reinforces our authentic perception of self, then we like it and it
Yeah.
feels good. So, we want to keep that. If it causes us stress, anything we don't like, it is challenging the authenticity of this false perception of self that we create called an identity. And it's something we need to become aware of and surrender. As we
As our
do that,
teacher. As our
as our
teacher.
teacher, that's our teacher. And we perceive that we create experiences and or create thoughts. We don't. We attract thoughts. We're magnetic. How
Yes.
we are attracts the nature of our experiences because that's what we need in order to learn, in order to become more aware and heal our erroneous perceptions of self.
Well, and when you're working with your clients, have you noticed this phenomenon? Because I have with mine, it happens every single time. As soon as somebody stops externalizing everything, right? Stops looking
Mm-hmm.
out here and works on themselves and raises their vibration, some of that toxicity will just take itself out. And new people that are on that higher vibration will come into their circle. The job comes, the good stuff comes. I mean, it
Yeah.
happens every single time,
Well,
but it requires people to do their own work first.
well, they have to assume the responsibility for their own participation in creation. And when they do that, then the whole nature of their experiences change.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so meditation and trauma. So it's you hear it all that meditate, 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 meditate. That's all you hear about, and it's confusing to a lot of people, I think. Silence for trauma survivors, being alone, even for me at one
Mm-hmm.
point in time, being by myself alone with my
Right.
thoughts was very uncomfortable. So, how do you, with your clients, introduce mindfulness without asking somebody to bypass their nervous system that is still just kind of stuck or trying to survive. So what are your methods for
Well,
introducing?
let me preface with your first question about trauma, and let's talk for a moment about trauma, and then that will help understand the healing process. Understand that, as I've already said, we perceive and experience to last some period of time, but it's actually comprised of dozens of thoughts. When we interpret a perceived experience to be traumatic, what is actually happening is one or more of the thoughts that are combined in that perceived experience are so the authenticity of our identity that we've created is so challenged that we're unable to adjudicate whether this thought feels good or doesn't feel good. And so for that thought, our awareness actually leaves our body and we enter a condition of shock.
Mm.
When someone enters the condition of shock, what has happened is their awareness has left their body. And if you've not worked with somebody who is in a condition of shock, you've seen somebody on TV that a tornado just went through the night before and tore their house and they can't find family members or anything, and they're just kind of walking around in a daze.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what has happened is their awareness has left their body. So in order to heal from that, have to get over that condition of shock, you can help them, but they have to somehow get that awareness back into their body to feel what they're feeling and contend with the thoughts that are continuing to be processed. When we encounter a perceived experience that one or two of the thoughts within that perceived experience cause us to enter into that condition of shock, then there is a vacancy in our flow of experience. And in order to heal that, it's necessary for the patient or for the trauma experiencer to go back, focus their awareness on that one thought and adjudicate that thought, either positively or negatively. It doesn't matter which way, but they have to make that decision about that thought. And in treatment of patients, what I do, I have a process that was created by Dr. Zimrad Slavinsky, a Serbian psychologist, that very effectively and immediately focuses the patient's attention on the thought. They quickly make that decision, which takes the emotion off of it and clears the entire perceived experience of the trauma.
And look how quick that is, guys. Friends, trauma healing does not have to be a trudge.
No.
And listen to Dean, it does not have to take years. Now you may have to revisit and practice, right?
Well, you don't have to revisit it. That's the interesting thing about it. It's not a desensitization process. I ask the patient, they know what the trauma experience is. Mm-hmm. And I ask them to scan the experience. I tell them, you don't have to relive it, but you have to go into it enough to find the peak moment of your emotion. And they go immediately to it. There's no hemming and hawing. They go right to that moment. They take a picture of that moment in their mind, and we focus their awareness on that moment. They adjudicate that moment. The whole perceived experience becomes cleared as an emotion, of emotion. And so it's no longer traumatic.
And no more flashbacks.
It takes about 10 minutes.
Wow.
And I've never had anybody. I've had one guy that was a veteran, and he had a lot of war experiences. And this one particular experience was very traumatic. He was actually during Vietnam, he was tasked with going in with his M1 shooting all of the Viet Cong that they had actually killed, but he had to shoot them in the head. And so when an M1 hits their head, their head blows up. And so he had this one particular experience where he had two guys that weren't dead yet. And he had 5 moments within a perceived experience. That's the most. Usually it's only 1 or 2 moments within the perceived experience, but 5 is the most that I've ever had from that one guy. Okay. And so usually it's just 1 or 2 moments within that perceived experience where they were unable to make that decision. Yeah. Now, that's the seed for the trauma. and that's the seed for the PTSD. The
Mm-hmm.
PTSD is post-traumatic. It's after the traumatic effect. And so that's behavior that people create in order to cope with that void in their flow of experience. So
Mm.
once the seed is healed, then they no longer need those behaviors. And 9 times out of 10, they can heal most of those adopted behaviors that they were creating in order to cope with that trauma. But it's very easy for a therapist to help them put the pieces of the puzzle together to resolve the behaviors that they created as a result of the trauma.
I love that. Say that again because I want everybody to hear that. It's so important. It's very easy
To heal the trauma. It's
yeah,
very easy to heal the trauma. Once you heal the trauma, the seed is gone and you no longer need the behavioral patterns that you created that constitute the PTSD.
so you're not repeating, you're not having flashbacks, you're not
You get your
replaying.
awareness back.
Yeah, which is so
Yeah.
huge. And then you get to make conscious choices again.
Well, then you can get on with your life.
Yeah. I love that. I love that, Dean. Good work, my friend. Good work. How did you come about this particular method and decide this is the way we're going to do it and start experimenting with it and seeing that it worked for you, for your clients, for your patients?
Well, I was directed. Zivrod actually came to the United States. This was back in 2008, and
Wow.
has several other methodologies that he created that I've been trained in as well. That's just one of the methodologies. He has another deeper methodology that's extremely effective in treating depression. Depression goes away in 2 or 3 sessions. Bipolar, it's been effective with bipolar. I've not had opportunity to work with schizoaffective or schizophrenia patients with any consistency, so I don't know its long-term effect for that. But it heals when he obviously requires you to experience the
Yes.
methodologies. And
Yes.
Zivrod died a few years ago, so he's no longer around. But when I when I was training to do the process, I had a lifelong sense of tension, even in vacation. Just no reason for it. It was just a low level, always there sense of tension. And that we call a condition of being.
Mm,
And that is just the nature of how you've structured this identity.
okay.
And we did the process, and it took about 22 minutes, and I thought it took hours. Literally, I took it. I thought I apologized when we got through with it because I'm sorry it took so long. He said it took 22 minutes, and we did the process, and you have such a feeling of bliss afterwards. It,
Oh.
it took me probably 2 days to come down for that condition of bliss,
Oh, you're on a natural high.
a
Yes.
natural high.
Yeah,
Yeah,
enlightenment high. Yeah.
yeah, and
Because
it,
you were
and it,
back. Because you were back.
well, you're back. Yeah, but you're
Yeah.
back. But it's like you were on psychedelics for that period of time. That you're just you're in your authentic self.
I love that. I love
Yeah,
that.
and it's common
So
for patients to have that common experience. That's part of the tell that I know that it's been effective is they enter in that condition of bliss afterwards.
I love that word too, bliss. Condition of bliss. Isn't that a beautiful way of being? That's
Yeah,
a
it's
beautiful way of
super.
being. Well, talking about the little bit heavier stuff. So, death, reincarnation, the unknown, uncertainty, which our ego certainly doesn't like, but you speak openly about death and reincarnation and humanity's relationship to creation. So, what are your beliefs? What do you feel happens when we transition? And what spiritual insights can we gather from that belief system?
Well, all sorts of stuff.
Well, you go down a
um,
rabbit hole. We like rabbit holes here on Notes from the Edge. So take it away, Dean. What you got
okay.
for us?
Well, understand that we simultaneously exist in both the metaphysical world and the physical world.
Mhm.
And if you imagine that we're on a sports team, and a sports team practices all week, we watch game films, we get coaching, we do exercises, all of that stuff in preparation for the game. And say the game's on Friday night, and then you have a game, And you're supposed to remember in the game all the stuff that you learned during practice during the week and implement that in the game. When the game's over, you go back to the locker room. You watch game films, you figure out, well, I did this, I didn't do that, and so on and so forth. And you do that for another week, and then you have another game. Right now, you and I are in the game. All the people listening to this are in the game. We're trying to remember all the good coaching that we got when we were in our metaphysical self. But our metaphysical self is our enduring self. It is forever. It doesn't die. It's not born. It doesn't experience the cycles that we do, that we perceive that we do when we're incarnate. We have done this. The average human is incarnated over 3,000 times. Some as many as 8,000. And so dying, we've done it so many times. It's just like taking a suit of clothes off when we put our pajamas on and go to bed and relax for a while. But it's who we are. Consciousness now is a scale also. It's a spectrum. And we are very low on that spectrum. There are 2 layers of consciousness below us. The first layer is inorganic matter, what we would perceive to be inorganic matter. The second layer is organic plants and animals. And those are foundational ranges of consciousness because it's necessary to have that in order for us to have the experience that we do. We need plants and animals to eat and interact with. You need the inorganic matter in order to create the planets, and the plants and animals enhance that nature, that environment. We are here in order to become awareness. Awareness, this is an inherent characteristic of the Creator that we are tasked with learning the curriculum of in this range of consciousness. When we adequately learn the curriculum of this range of consciousness, we will graduate to the next range of consciousness. And that range of consciousness is tasked with exploring ourselves through the lens of love and actually become love, which is not an emotion. It is a condition of a being. It is an inherent characteristic of the Creator, which means every time that we have experienced love, it is not because we have experienced an emotion. It is not because we have gotten anything from anybody other than permission to temporarily surrender our erroneous perception of self, our identity, and we have felt who we actually are.
In our natural state.
In our natural state. That's
Yes.
our authentic, it's part of our authentic self.
Yes, I'm exploring that right now with actually the transformational coach that I'm working with. We're exploring love as the state of our natural being. That's it. We have misused it. We have complicated it. We have oversimplified it. We have turned it into an emotion. But yeah, it is our natural state. And so that's what I'm in the state of practicing right now.
Yeah.
So cool that you're on today, because I actually just talked about that with my coach yesterday. So enlightenment in ordinary life. And I love your word bliss, state of bliss, being embodied, being in awareness. I love that. Talk to us about the word enlightenment. What does that mean? Because that's also a word that we're hearing all over the place right now. But what does it really mean?
Well, we misperceive it to be a destination because of the successes in the example of the Buddha. But enlightenment is actually the path. It is the process of evolution of consciousness. And it is founded on the concept of light, enlightenment. Light is information, and light informs energy how to be. We are all energy. And so light, as we gain greater light, is informing us on how to be in greater alignment with the unity of creation.
I love it. Alignment. I call it resonance sometimes in here. Alignment.
Well, it's because we feel it.
Yeah.
It's vibrationally we feel it.
Yes, and you know it. And when you're in it, amazing things happen. Okay, Dean, so let me ask you this. How do we feel better more consistently throughout our day. If we tend to be, if the listeners are out there and they're like, I'm up some days, I'm down some days I'm all over the map, how do we maintain that state of bliss or a sense of enlightenment throughout our day a little bit more consistently?
Well, it requires healing, and healing is the process, a two-step process, twofold process. We create an identity, and the identity is nothing more than a bundle of beliefs. That's all it is. That's our mind. That is the mind that we're using right now to communicate, and that is a bundle of beliefs that we've agreed or either gotten it by osmosis from parents, friends, family, society, whatever. Those beliefs are the lens that we use to interpret our experiences. Now,
Exactly.
our experiences, I told you already, are we attract, and they cause us, for the most part, to experience what we don't like because we attract those things that we need to become aware of to heal within ourselves. If we don't learn the lesson at the time that we have the experience, we get to keep that lesson in the form of emotional baggage. And so that emotional baggage gets heavy.
It
And
does.
that's
That backpack gets heavy sometimes. Yep.
Well,
Yep.
that is the one common characteristic worldwide for people that experience depression is it feels heavy. So what
Yeah.
possibly could feel heavy? The emotional baggage that you didn't learn at the time that you encountered the experience. The knack of healing that is that inwardly directed awareness. It becomes aware that you're feeling that. You let when you discover that your car has a flat tire, you get it fixed. You don't just walk away and never use the car anymore. So when you discover that this emotional baggage is heavy and you need to let it go, you let it go. The
Yeah.
same is true of the beliefs that you've incorporated into the erroneous perception of self that we're calling an identity. When you realize that that belief is perpetuating your attraction of the type of experiences that are perpetuating your stress and or suffering, you let that belief go.
Yeah.
When you do that, more of your authentic self is emerged. That authentic self is already happy. It is already feeling that love and that joyfulness that you desire to experience. So the more that you surrender that perception of the authenticity of your identity, the more of your authentic self emerges and the happier you get. And that's why happiness is the measure of how we're doing in our healing process.
I absolutely love it. Yeah. Friends out there, learn the lessons quickly, right? When
And you do
stress
that by
has
paying attention to what's going on inside of you.
Yeah, and then making the decision to make some changes for you. But I loved your analogy about the car, right? We would
Yeah.
just not fix our car because then our car's not going to take us anywhere. But we have these experiences, and then I drowned my emotions in a bottle for 20 years because I was running from stuff. As soon as I turned inward and actually faced all of it, Dean, it's not that bad. It's actually kind of fun, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the 12-step process, and I advertise, I teach my hospital patients the 12-step process from a perspective they've never had before. And invariably, I work with people with a dual diagnosis. They've got an addiction plus some sort of mental
Yep.
condition. And I can't be with them. Once they leave the hospital, they're gone, they're on their own, and they need a resource. And so I go through the 12-step process and I explain to them actually what it's doing to them so that they can benefit with it. They can go anywhere in the world and use that as a blueprint for how to heal. But when you get to I think it's step 4, and you make that moral inventory, then you've got to look inside and say, okay, well, what am I feeling? That's when you begin to heal. That's when you first assume that responsibility for your life, for your healing.
Assume responsibility for your life. Boom. Boom, Dean. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. Well, Dean, how can people find you? Where can they find your books? I want to pick up Enlightenment Made Simple. I think it sounds brilliant. Where can we find you? Guys, you don't have to write this down. I'm going to put clickable links for you, but let us
Okay.
know where we can find you.
I have everything on my web sourced on my website. The initial Dean, DEAN, Graves, GRAVES, all one word, .org. And
Wonderful.
you can contact me. We can. I do remote viewing or remotely the The trauma process is all over the world. It takes about 10 minutes. Literally, it takes about 10 minutes. The more deeper processes take about 30 minutes. You'll be amazed at the experience. But the books are there, the podcast references are there, and you can be bored to tears by flipping through all the
Never
pages.
boring. This stuff is exciting, guys. Get on the healing journey. It is worth every minute. Well, Dean, before we close out, and guys, you don't have to write down his links. We'll make sure they have clickable links everywhere we plaster this thing out there. But Dean, when we close out, we ask our guests 2 questions. Are you ready for them?
Mm-hmm, sure.
Okay. The first one is, in your own life, what did you perform in order to survive? And what did dropping that role, mask, or performance do for you?
Well, I developed a pretty significant identity, which we're all designed to do. And I was an avid promoter of that. And I was just tricky as you could imagine in trying to pretend somebody that I'm not in order to try to get more of what I like. And that was necessary in order for me to hit that brick wall, in order to stop and internally focus that awareness inside and begin to heal. And it is a healing process, and it's an ongoing. I mean, it's not a matter of reaching the destination in this lifetime, but it is necessary to begin the process. And once you begin the process, it's like pushing a car from a dead stop. It's hard to get it going, but once you get some some momentum going, it gets easier and easier because you're gaining more of your natural energy back in order to do more work.
It does. And you've said a word that I think is so beautifully simple, but wraps up everything you've been talking about. This is supposed to be an experience for us.
Yeah, it is. That's a life experience. This is what life is about. And when you understand, if you go to a football game and you have never seen a football game, don't know what they're doing down there, then you're like Andy Griffith at his first football game. He doesn't know what they're doing down there. But if you know the rules of the game, then it's much more fun. It's much more entertaining. And the same is true when you understand that life has a purpose and it has a plan. When you understand that, then you can play according to the rules, and you can make much more progress much more quickly.
I love that. All right, last question, Dean. What do we need to be conversing more about? What conversations do you want us to be talking more about?
Who are you?
Who are you?
The most important question that you can ask is why.
Oh, I love why. Yes. Context matters. Ask the why. Yes. Ask the why. Beautiful, Dean. Well, friends out there, thank you so much for listening. And I'm going to ask you guys the same question. What are you performing in your life in order to survive? And what might dropping those roles, masks, or identities or performance do to improve your life? I'm your host, Lisa Lacy. And when you find that answer, I'll see you at the edge. Thank you so much, Dean.
Thank you, Lisa. I've enjoyed it tremendously.